And again, it's that fine line between producing food and cattle and beef and corn and food to feed a growing population and still creating and keeping those wild spaces. Alright, well, first episode of the Out Here Show, presented by us here at Whitetail Instinct. We wanted to do a little bit of a different type of, we don't like calling it a podcast, we want it to be more of a show, but we wanted a different show than what's out there in the hunting industry. It's going to be turkey hunting content, whitetail hunting content, of course, public land hunting content, outdoor industry content. Yeah, hunting industry in general content. Of course, there's going to be tips and what we think are tips and what we do, strategies involved, but we want it to be more of a well-rounded, just everything hunting industry, everything hunting type of show. Yep, and we're still developing it, but we want to bring other people on, guests on, friends in the industry, just really get to know kind of the behind the scenes of the hunting industry, as well as the tips and tactics that you see on this channel. Yeah, we don't want it to just be tips and tactics with the guys that we're going to have on, because they get asked that all the time. We want the fun stories, like you said, the behind the scenes stuff. So right now it's going to be every Monday. We're going to have a new show, hopefully as things grow and evolve. I mean, the set's going to change, I'm sure, as we go. The guests are going to change, how we operate is going to change. But as the show grows, we'll hope to increase that to maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or who knows where it's going to take us. But right now, every Monday, noon Central Time, the Out Here Show is going to be up on YouTube and out on wherever you listen to podcasts for you to listen to it. Yep, correct. And the big thing that me and Brody have talked about that we want is we want guest participation, which usually makes me cringe when people say about participation. But if you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, we want you to message us on Facebook or Instagram. It's at Whitetail Instinct, or just leave a comment below. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, but we want your comments on what we talk about. If you have an opinion, leave it below. We're going to talk about our opinions, that's part of the show, but we want you guys to leave your opinion below as well. We want your comments, we want anything, and we definitely want your questions. We want to do a whole bunch of shows that's just viewer questions, whether it's on our tactics. We don't claim to be the best, but we can tell you what we think, just give you another opinion. Whether it's a question on something we talked about, we'll bring it back up. If you have a really strong opinion, we might even talk about it on the show or talk about what we talked about last week. So we want you guys to message us however you want, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the podcast section, wherever. We want you guys' participation. Yep, and it's a kind of an opinion-based show. It's kind of the basis of it. Kind of half talk show, half opinion-based show. So share your opinions, keep it respectful, obviously, but use it as a place to kind of discuss things and see, kind of get a feel for what other people are thinking. Yeah, just almost like a forum that's in the comment section. Yep. So with that, we'll move on to really the main topic of the whole show today. It's really broad. We're starting off with a really big one, and that's what will the deer hunting be like 10 years from now. So really big, really broad. That's 2031. Who knows what any of us will be doing in 2031, but we're going to try and look at what we think deer hunting will be 10 years from now. So it's just an article I found, realtree.com. If you want to go read the original article, you can go through and read the article and see what the original writer said. We'll talk about some of what he said, and I'll, of course, give our thoughts too. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, and what do you think, just real quick, real broad, deer hunting 2031? There'll be something new. I think you and I have lived through the public land change. I know when we first started Whitetail Instinct, we barely had any YouTube videos, and just thinking about starting it, the whole public land thing was very rare. You did not see that anywhere, and now in the last 10 years, it's everywhere. So I think there will be a change like that, but I don't know what that change will be, I guess. I don't know if it'll be a shift back to private land. Will we go back to private land and management and being more concerned about the habitat and what our populations are looking like? It seems like that turn is coming for turkeys. People taking that into their own hands and making the adjustments to help the turkey population. I don't know if we'll see a shift back to private land, managing your land, and helping the habitat and wildlife. Yeah, it's all kind of a cycle. We're young enough that we haven't seen the full cycle of the outdoor industry, but like you said, the public land craze is huge. When we first started Whitetail Instinct, it was just getting started, and that was one of the ideas, is we wanted to be on public, and then it just completely took off, of course, with the hunting public guys. But before that, it was Growing Deer TV, Midwest Whitetail, Realtree Monster Bucks, where it was growing and managing big deer on private land. So I can see that trend coming back. It's just like trends with any sports or clothes, or now the high-waisted jeans are back in, and it's just like a trend. It's going to come back around, and pretty soon you won't see any public land. It'll all be, here's what I'm doing, on my farm to grow big deer. Which there's nothing wrong with either or. It's just a trend, and it's interesting to see where it goes. And there's probably some new technology that'll come out that'll make it something we don't even know what's going to grow and evolve from.
Though, even the idea of podcasts and having YouTube videos, it's something that in the last 10 to 15 years has changed the hunting industry, just based off, media and technology that's changed. Like you said, who knows what's going to come around, not only in hunting industry technology, but media technology that changes the way we show hunts.
Yeah, you started with Wired to Hunt being the original, essentially the original hunting podcast, and now they're all over the place. It's something even 5 years before Mark did that, you never thought there'd be hunting podcasts.
Podcasts weren't even really a thing, and then, it takes over not only the hunting industry, but everything else.
Who knows 3 years from now what's going to happen, let alone 10, but we're going to dive into it and see what...
And I think we've never lived through having deer populations, and we're talking about the state of Nebraska here, where you had to draw for your tags. I know when we first started going out with our dad, the populations of deer were low enough that not everybody got a tag. And I think that changes what the hunting industry does. If we see populations have issues, whether it's CWD or deer diseases, where you can't just every year get a bow tag in the state of Nebraska or Iowa or wherever, that will change things too.
To me, it's even crazy to think about the possibility of not getting a tag here in Nebraska for home state. Like,
I never even think about it.
We're just like, we're getting one. Like bow tags.
You can buy it a day before the season and you get your tag. To think about, and CWD is a real big issue, and we don't know what it's going to do, but thinking about not being able to get a tag, in your home state, and what that does for people being able to travel to public land, if they're not doing as many out-of-state permits, then you don't got the shows, you don't got the public land being as big as it is.
Yep, and that's a good segue, because my first thing that I have written down here is this might just, like you said, might just be Nebraska. Everything's different, like where you guys are here in Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Kansas, wherever it might be different. But for me, I think we're seeing a plateau in deer populations in general. It's definitely not what it was, and I don't know that it's declining. I don't think the worry is there like it is turkey numbers, like I've seen on social media. Every show, every podcast is talking about declining turkey numbers. I don't think we're at that level with deer populations, but I think we're going to see a plateau before it maybe even goes back up, or hopefully it doesn't go down, but I think a plateau for sure.
And just being involved in kind of the conservation side of things in the state of Nebraska the last few years, there's a kind of a thing going between, deer damage, farmers, and hunting, and how you balance those numbers. So increasing tags to kill more deer, but what's that do to the population and hunting numbers and that kind of thing. So I think there's something there too that's going to get figured out, I guess, in the next few years, as far as, how do we keep, the farmers and the producers happy when you're in ag country, not destroying crops, while also providing a successful hunt for the hunters.
Yeah, you're striking that balance between, because of course me and you want more deer. I mean, that's just plain and simple. Hunters probably want more deer.
You want to see deer when you hunt, I think, is the biggest thing. Same with turkeys, and they found with some of those videos and that research, you want to hear gobbles when you turkey hunt. You want to see deer when you deer hunt. It doesn't, at least for me, and this is somewhat of an opinion, it doesn't matter if it's a 160 every single time I go out. But if I go out and I can see 6 or 7 does, even if I don't see that buck, that's a success. But if I'm going out and I'm sitting and I'm not seeing anything, that's a problem. And I think, at least for me, very basic, is if hunters see deer when they hunt, it's a success.
Yeah, it's just to keep, especially new hunters too. Hunter recruitment was a whole nother issue. But if you're, even me and you who've hunted for years now, if we don't see deer, we start to get, everybody, you start to get you can get a little depressed, a little nervous, a little worried. And especially a new hunter. Imagine a new hunter going out on public land, sitting down, not seeing any deer for 3 days in a row. You might have just lost a hunter.
And I think about that, in the very first time we started hunting public land, we went from hunting private land that we hardly ever saw deer on just during rifle season. In our first sits on public land, we saw a little spike buck and a bunch of does, but we went from not seeing anything to seeing something on public land, and we were hooked. Public land was it for us. We were going back every single time. We just got lucky in the way that we saw a deer that first time and thought, hey, this public land can be it.
Yeah, the first time we ever went out in public, we sat, who knew, we didn't even know what we were doing.
We just plopped
We
down.
filmed with our phone on this little handmade thing, and we seen like a doe and like 3 spikes come through, and we're like, it would take a week of us sitting on the
All
land
day.
that we rifle hunted to see 3 spikes. We're like, this is outrageous,
But
this is great.
That
and
hooked us
yeah,
because we saw a deer.
yeah, it's all about getting that hook for new, kind of going off on a little bit of tangent, but for new hunters, it's getting that hook, and most of the times that hook is seeing deer or seeing a buck.
Yeah.
So that's like we mentioned, going back to what we were talking about before, Bo, though, is that plateau of deer numbers is gonna fluctuate, because like you said, it's between, where do we find that line between making farmers happy, especially here in ag country, and making the deer hunters happy. We're gonna do our top 3. We're gonna have a bunch of different segments that we want to throw on the podcast or the show every once in a while. And the first one that we're going to do for our top 3 is top 3 hunting TV shows that you watched growing up. So, like we mentioned before, leave your answers
This
below.
is your chance to share what you watched as a kid growing up.
Yeah, so we're obviously gonna look at them, and we'll probably on the next podcast come back and say this is what everybody was watching. It seemed like everybody was watching Jury Outdoors or
There'll
something.
be poll questions on YouTube here and our social media channels as well. So we'll try to get a gauge when we come back as far as what interested most people.
Yep, so if you're listening to the podcast, go to one of our social medias. It's at Whitetail Instinct, Facebook or Instagram. Obviously on YouTube, just comment right below. So I'll let you start your number. We'll start with number 3. Your number 3 hunting show that you remember watching growing up. Some of ours are probably going to be the same, obviously we grew up in the same household.
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
For me, number 3, Winchester's Whitetail Revolution. People like Alan Treadwell, Bob Folkrod, and Mark Kaiser. It's just those names to me are synonymous with like watching hunting on a cold fall day. Like Mark Kaiser was like, I was obsessed with him. Like just watching him hunt, and he was hunting in Nebraska, and like he just had he didn't necessarily have an accent, but he had a way of speaking on the show.
Yeah.
Like, I could just hear that.
If you watch Mark Kaiser long enough, and then you go out and film your own, you'll
You
find
start
yourself
doing
talking
it, or talking like it.
Mark Kaiser or Melissa Bachman. If
Yeah.
I watch one of their 2 shows, and then I go out and we film, I end up talking like one
that.
of them.
Yeah, just like, but I just remember those names were synonymous. And that was, we're young, but that was still at a time when YouTube hunting shows weren't a thing.
No.
Like, if you were watching hunting, you were watching on Versus channel, and it was these guys, like these celebrity hunters. So for me, it was, that's my number 3, Winchester's Whitetail Revolution with those names.
Yeah, you remember Versus Country? That's not even a thing anymore. I don't even know what channel that turned into. Fox
I
or
don't know.
NBC Sports or I don't know. But
NBC Sports, I think.
Yeah, but Versus Country was like the big thing.
Saturday
mornings, and then as it got closer to deer season, I remember we always had a Friday off before high school football playoff games. We'd sight in our rifles and come back, and Versus Country shows would be on, and that's when we only hunted rifle season when we were younger, and that's when you knew deer season was like close. Like even today, I have them saved on my computer because you can get them from
Off Winchester.
Yeah, off Winchester. You can get them and watch them. And I have them saved, and when I miss deer season or when deer season's getting close,
I watch them in preparation for my list.
It feels like deer season when I watch those, and I'm sure everybody else has.
It's just hearing those people's voices too. Like it brings me back to being like 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, home, pumped for deer season.
I don't even know what those guys are even doing anymore.
No,
Mark
I don't know.
Kaiser's still on, but like Bob Folkrod, I don't even
It's
know.
like deer hunting.
Okay.
Is Mark Kaiser, I believe.
Yeah.
That show.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're doing anymore, but those were just great. And then if you go back and watch them now, you can tell half the deer footage isn't even from where they're hunting. Like they weren't produced even like most of the guys on YouTube are producing now. The production quality is not great compared to what it is now. But watching it then, not a clue. It was the greatest thing ever.
Yep.
So my number 3, along the same lines, is Winchester World of Whitetail. I just went with a different one. So, but still, Versus Country, World of Whitetail. I'll do my number 2.
Okay.
My number 2, and I don't even know if he's still around, and it wasn't that long ago, but I feel like it was when I was a kid. Maybe I wasn't. But Gun It with Benny Spies was my number 2. It was relatable. It was the first hunting show that was, hey, he's just like us. He's funny. He doesn't take it too seriously.
Half his hunts, he didn't kill anything.
Yeah.
It was about him shooting and missing. Like you said, the biggest thing, relatable.
Yep, and that's what the hunting industry is still missing, and definitely was missing back then. It was just him having fun hunting in South Dakota.
Yeah.
But it was great. Yeah. It was a show that we made sure to sit down and watch, like a primetime ABC show or something. It was one of the shows that we made sure to watch.
Yeah, the Toaster Olympics.
Oh, that was
the
great.
best. I laughed so hard. I
Yeah.
mean, these are 15-minute episodes TV. Toaster Olympics was the funniest thing. If you haven't seen it, I don't even know if you can find it.
There's
You
a
probably,
Toaster Olympics 1 and 2.
yeah, if you can find them on like Netflix or something, I'm not sure. But if you can go and watch Gun It with Benny Spies and watch the Toaster Olympics and then watch all of them,
Yeah.
go watch those. I mean, just hilarious.
I don't remember what the guy's name when they make the sandwiches. I won't ruin it because if you can find
Yeah.
it, watch it. When they make the sandwiches on the Toaster Olympics, greatest thing ever.
Yeah, and just like you said, it's just relatable. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the best day of our Whitetail Instinct lives was when Gun It with Benny Spies liked one of our posts.
Yeah.
You remember that? It's been a
I don't
while.
remember that one.
I can't remember. It's been.
Oh no, I do. I don't remember
It's
what
been a
post
long
it was though.
time back.
Yeah.
But Chance texts me and goes, Gun It, Benny Spies, Gun It with Benny Spies liked one of our posts.
Yeah.
When we had like 15 followers. We just
Yeah.
started, we were in college or something.
Yeah.
Like he liked one of our posts, so that was one of our
Yeah,
biggest.
it's just one of the, just like football players and everybody else. It's one of the.
We looked up
you
to Benny Spies
Yeah.
in that TV show growing up.
Yep, it was great.
Part of the reason we're doing what we're doing.
And it's just like I said, it was relatable, but it was why, like us, and I think we've talked with the hunting public guys a lot, obviously, when you work there, but that's what they enjoy, and that's why their group and their show is so popular. It was a group having fun, and that's what his show was, and that's what we enjoy about hunting, is when we get us, me and you, and Dad together, it's just the group hunting and having fun aspect of it that he really put into the show.
Yeah, and
So-
it wasn't just who can shoot the biggest whitetail. It was, we're going to go pheasant hunting, or we're going to shoot pigeons out of a barn.
Yeah,
And
but
trying to get permission
how many-
to hunt pigeons out of a barn.
how many shows would I watch him?
Shoot pigeons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember the one he's like, good news, he doesn't own it, but he says we can hunt it. We laugh so hard at that. It's not, I don't know why it's funny, but it's funny.
Yeah, it's a great show. So if you haven't seen that, most people probably have, I don't know. It's hilarious. Try to find it somewhere.
You number 2?
Yep, my number 2, Bucks of Tecomate with David Morris and Jeff
I forgot about
Foxworthy.
that one. Yep, that was a good.
It's more Texas hunting, but back then I don't know that it was.
Yeah.
But it was. They had their own food, like their food
Yeah.
plots or something. Bucks of Tecomate, like they can the theme music, everything.
Yep, I
Jeff
never-
Foxworthy's on there. That one I remember.
I never thought of that one. That would have made my top 3 had I thought about it.
Yeah.
Because, well, one, Jeff Foxworthy, again, funny, relatable, and again, it's one of the ones you remember waking up at 7:30 on Saturday morning to watch David Morris and Jeff Foxworthy.
Again, it's the names too. Those guys were the hunting names, the hunting celebrities at the
Yeah.
time. Were David Morris, Jeff Foxworthy, and the
Yeah.
other ones we've talked about.
Where now kids are going to wake up and talk about Aaron Warburton and Zach Farrenbaugh and Dan Infalt. We're,
Yeah.
Benny Spies and David Morris and Jeff Foxworthy. So that was a good one. I forgot about that. But you're right. The theme music and everything, you can like feel it. And they did like the hunting hot seat segments where they talked about.
just like this. There's
Yeah.
like a podcast
Yeah.
segment, at a 3-minute clip.
Yeah.
They talked about an issue. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. The
We're
hunting
hitting the
hot
show.
seat. I totally forgot about that.
See, now I just want to go back and watch all
Yeah.
the episodes. I'm sure we can,
You can find them.
I'm sure you can find
I'm
those.
sure. But yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Your number 1?
My number 1's Gun It with Benny Spies.
Okay.
Yep, I put
We
that
haven't
one
switched.
a little higher up
Yep.
and put Gun It with up
And
there
I
just
put-
because of the relatability and just how funny it was.
Yeah, but I put Winchester's Whitetail Revolution as my number
you
1.
put that?
So we had them
Yeah.
switched around, but about the group. We would have had the same 3 had I remembered Bucks of Tecomate.
I
We wouldn't have the same
Well, we
thing.
grew up in the same house. We're probably watching
Yeah.
the same things. But I mean, back then it's not like now where you could have 800 YouTube channels you watch.
Yeah.
There were only a certain number of shows. I know for some people it's the DVDs. We were a little too young
Too
for
young
the
for
DVDs.
that, yeah.
But I remember watching a few, but we were too young for those.
The real tree Monster
Bucks. We were a little too young for that at the time. But yeah, these channels on Versus and some of those were where we watched our hunting.
Yeah, so, like we said, we want to know, I'm just interested to know what people listening or watching, what your shows are. Because we know what ours are, age, you're going to see the age differences. I think they're probably going to be grouped up into the versus country type stuff, the DVDs before, and some of the younger guys are probably going to be, might even be, Midwest Whitetail, Growing Deer TV stuff. It'll be interesting to see how it all breaks out. So we definitely want you guys to comment below, message us, we'll gather it all together and hopefully get back to you with what everybody's thinking.
Yep.
Kind of going on to some of the other things is that whitetails are the keystone species. So as whitetail hunting goes, to me anyways, as I see it, the Game and Parks system goes. Because all that funding, all the money, Pittman Robertson dollars that go in for people hunting whitetails every year helps, non-game bird species, fish, turkeys, everything, just
Pollinators.
because of how big deer hunting is and how much money comes in from that.
Yeah, I'd agree. And the success of hunters and keeping people interested in hunting is key to helping some of that other conservation. It's not to say that turkey hunting doesn't bring in money and duck hunting and waterfowl hunting doesn't bring in money, but whitetail hunting is still keen, I think, as far as hunting goes, and it helps with a lot of other things.
Yeah, to kind of draw a comparison, we're in Nebraska, so Nebraska football is king in Nebraska, just like Alabama football is king in Alabama and Ohio State football is king in Ohio. I mean, you have for college football anyways, but college football money gives money to all the other sports, bowling, swimming, track and field, everything, because they probably don't make a whole lot of money. Same thing, whitetail hunting is the college football, and turkey hunting and squirrel hunting and trapping is the bowling and the swimming and everything else. You have to have that big species. So as whitetail hunting goes, all the other species and conservation efforts go along with it. That's why it's so important that the game and parks in your state and our state and every state keeps the whitetail hunting strong and keeps the whitetail hunters happy.
Yeah, and those other species are important, but when you talk about turkey numbers declining, and then maybe that means turkey hunter numbers decline. If you have a species that can help, you can take money in a roundabout way from the whitetail hunting to help the turkey hunting and to help the turkey habitat and bring that up too. I think it all works together to kind of raise everything.
Yeah, it's not that the other ones are less important, it's just that people enjoy the challenge of whitetail hunting, and the interest for whitetail hunting will always be greater than the other ones. There's just, people aren't going to, go out and support the non-game bird, shorebird species like they are whitetails. It's just not going to happen, but you can use the whitetail to help habitat and help fund improvements for the other species. So, moving on now to what do we think buck hunting will be like? Where are we at now, and where is it going to go buck hunting wise in general? This is hard, each state's different, but
I think, and it's kind of, I see both. So I see a lot of people, and ourselves included, trying to make it more about the experience and less about the buck. So you see a lot of that getting infused back into the sport because we've seen it leave, but I also see a lot of the big buck stuff still around. And both ways are fine. But I don't know, that's a tough one. Because I see both. I see the trying to make it more about the experience and I guess the good old days and the way it used to be, kind of, less social media, posting your pictures. But I also still see, shooting the big buck is still out there, whether you just see it more or not.
Are we going to see better buck hunting over the next 10 years? You think it'll be better, or is it going to be harder to come by?
I think it,
because we're losing habitat, so that hurts. Yeah. But people are more aware, more focused on what it takes to do it, to get a 3.5-year-old deer.
I think that will increase, because I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think there might be a shift to owning your own land and doing your part on your 10 acres, 60 acres, 500 acres to make habitat and wildlife better, because we are seeing a decrease in habitat. I think there'll be a shift to creating better habitat on the land you have, and I think that will make the deer buck hunting better.
And that's where it's going to have to go. Game and Parks organizations, and it's not QDMA anymore. National Deer Association, Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited can only do so much because they're only the land that they can put into conservation. They only have so much money, and they can only do so much. And there's 97% of Nebraska's private land is going to have to come from private landowners.
Yeah, and I don't think the Game and Parks is not taking in any more public land necessarily. It's not their priority, I guess. So, they're buying land to keep it habitat is not going to happen at the rate it needs to. And that's why you've seen a lot of the push for private lands to step up, as we have been, to create that habitat.
It's going to have to come from, if we want the whitetail numbers to stay at least where they're at, private landowners, which we have been doing, not like we haven't been doing, but it's going to have to increase from everybody, not just the deer hunting guys. You're going to have to get farmers, you're going to have to get the guy that just has 10 acres behind his house to just leave a little, to not, put it in brome grass and hay it all the time, or do that in a different way that provides habitat for longer out of the year. But it's going to have to be a group effort, and that's where the challenge, I think, lies, especially just getting whitetails in general, but bigger bucks and more bucks. It's going to have to be a group effort from a lot of different people, but that's a huge challenge. how do you organize hunters, game and parks organizations, non-hunters, farmers? How do you get them in a group all thinking the same way?
Yeah, and I think that's the first thing that came to my mind, but the more we talk about it, I think that is the shift. It'll be funny to look back on this in 10 years and see if that actually was the shift. But I think that is the shift, the focus on controlling what you can control habitat-wise, because the amount of land is decreasing. I showed you that graphic the other day, and the amount of land in a small corner of southeast Iowa or southwest Iowa that have changed in the last 10 years, and I can overlay that, but the amount of habitat that went from not corn or not ag to ag in the last 10 years, I believe, was astonishing. So you're not necessarily creating more habitat, we're losing it. So I think that shift to, reversing that or doing what you can on the land you have will be the shift, because it's always, that fight is getting harder.
It's going to have to, it's doing, like you said, doing your part. You have 5 acres, what can you do? You have 200, what can you do just to ensure that, like you said, we're losing acres and we're losing it quick, especially to ag. We've seen it around here where just what used to be field or pasture is cornfield.
Yep.
So,
and again, it's that fine line between producing food and cattle and beef and corn and food to feed a growing population and still creating and keeping those wild spaces.
yep, and I think the last thing I've written down here is big whitetails rule, and they always will. I mean, you go out, you get west, it's big elk and big mule deer, but for your eastern states, Nebraska east and south, it's big whitetails, and it always will be. So keeping them around is key, I think, to everything else.
And I think, we say it's about the experience, and I think it can be, but we're still going out there hoping that 160 walks by. Like, if you're saying, I only go out because of the experience, it's not completely true. Like me and you, we're still going out there hoping that big buck's on public land. We don't, maybe that's not how we determine a success or not, but you're still out there in search of that buck, that big buck.
Yeah, good point. There's got to be an end game. Going back to the football analogy, we're college football guys, Nebraska football. No one watches a football game or a baseball game for there to be a tie. That's why I don't understand soccer. But you don't go out there there's got to be an end result in the football game.
Yeah.
Same with, it's fun to play. Everybody loves, players love playing it. Just
Tom
like
Brady ain't playing for the experience.
Yeah, he enjoys the experience, I'm sure.
He's playing to win.
Super Bowls are nice. Playing in front of 80,000 people is fun. Getting paid well is fun. The experience is part of it. I'm sure he wouldn't, that's what everybody says when they retire. They miss that experience. That's definitely part of it, just like it is for us hunting. But there's an end result, and that's hoping to shoot the 140, 150, 160 a doe. Whatever your end result is, you're still hoping for the end result.
Real quick, we want to do this segment. We'll just be real quick with this. This is going to be our out of left field segment, part of the show where we talk about something that has nothing to do with hunting and everything to do with sports, because like most of you, we have interest outside of hunting. Most of the time that revolves around sports. We talked about it already. Will Aaron Rodgers play for the Packers?
Well,
This season.
Yep. As we're recording this, I think we're 2 days into OTAs, right?
I believe.
So it's June, what is it?
Or training
June
camp
9th.
or whatever they
As
call
we're
it.
I don't know when this is going to air, but June 9th now. So who knows what's going to, as we go. But watching the stuff on TV, earlier I was like, no way he's going to get traded. And then I was like, nah, he'll play. And now I don't think he'll play. He'll sit out and then go somewhere else. I don't think he'll play. Because he doesn't like the people in the front office.
Yep, and for me, I keep yelling it at my TV every morning when they're talking about it on Get Up, but what can the Packers do to mend the relationship? Like, what does Aaron Rodgers want? He's not holding out because he wants more money.
Nope.
It's not a contract thing, it's not a money thing, it's just a Aaron Rodgers thing. What can the Packers do besides just, kneeling at his feet and saying, we're so sorry, we made a huge
Aaron
mistake,
Rodgers, yeah.
We'll get rid of Jordan Love.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if they'll figure it out enough for him to play this year and then he'll leave, or if he'll just sit out the whole year. But it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, he's got enough money. They made it to the NFC Championship game, so he can complain about weapons, but they're all there. And he made a few mistakes in that game against the Patriots, or was it the Chiefs, whoever he played?
Buccaneers.
Buccaneers, not the Patriots. So it's like, I don't know, like you said, what more? And that's what the Packers organization is set up so they can't just fire general managers because they're publicly owned.
Yeah.
You can't just get rid of whoever he's mad at.
That's interesting.
So there's no easy fix. You can't go get people now so nothing's going to change. And they were talking about today.
There's no trade destinations for him.
Yeah,
The Broncos, probably. That's
yeah,
it.
and he doesn't like the people that are above him. So why would he come back and want to play well and make them look good?
I think that's the thing. I just can't think of what the Packers could do to bring him back. Like what the issue is that they could solve to bring him back, I guess, is the big thing.
Yeah. So leave your comments below. What do you think? Because
You
who
think
knows?
Aaron
Everybody's got an
Rodgers-
opinion on it.
Yeah.
Is Aaron Rodgers going to play for the Packers?
Yep. So that's our out of left field. We'll do that every week. Just talk about something that has nothing to do with hunting and everything to do with sports.
So the next thing is, will the big buck states that we think of now stay the same? The writer mentioned Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Kansas as the big buck states. Will those states stay the same as being known for big buck states?
I think yes and no. Some of them will, but there will be other states that, whether you call it a fad or that jump on to the scene, I guess. Oklahoma comes to mind as being one, not that it's not talked about, but one that maybe makes that jump into being Iowa-esque. I think Iowa will always remain that way. It's kind of like Blue Blood football program, since we're on that. They kind of always remain talked about and present, and just the way they do their management and all that. The habitat there and just the mix, I think, will always make Iowa that way. So I think there'll be new states that jump on, but some of those blue blood states will remain.
Yeah, that's what I have down. When you look at Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, you're looking at states with the best deer habitat. Outside of some drastic change in habitat, because they have the habitat, they will stay the big buck states.
And hunter numbers.
Yeah.
Places like,
Lower hunter numbers,
Michigan,
best
Pennsylvania,
habitat.
higher hunter numbers probably decrease the likelihood of it being a big buck state
Yeah.
in the eyes of hunters.
And I would say Nebraska's been traditionally known as a big buck state, but if we keep losing habitat the way we are, that's the difference between us and Kansas or us and Iowa.
Agreed.
So as
Just
long
having
as
first-hand knowledge of
yeah,
that.
all those states have the genetics, they have the history of being big buck states. Most of them are one buck states like Kansas. Where Nebraska, you can shoot two, and our rifle season is where it is, which is a whole other topic. But they have the habitat. As long as that doesn't change, they're going to remain the big buck states. And like we mentioned, we want you guys' comments and questions, so let us know. Are you in an underrated big buck state? Are you in a big buck state and you see it going the opposite direction like we do in Nebraska? Again, we want your comments, we want your questions. Anything we talked about, what do you think on these big buck states? Are we on the right track or are we way off? So, and the big one here that we're moving on to, you mentioned it before, but chronic wasting disease. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we're by no means experts and we're not biologists. That's what they're there to do, use the science to do it. But I think it could possibly have, of all the things we're going to talk about, it has a chance to have the biggest impact on deer numbers 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's the one. It's kind of quieted down just a little bit, I think, but it's still there. It's still an issue, like you said. I think it is the biggest. I guess besides habitat loss, those two are kind of at the top. But like as far as just a deer biology thing, it's CWD, I think, and what it could do.
It's just scary, the possibilities of what
it could do.
What it could do. I don't know if it's going to. I don't know if it's the more you look for it, the more you find it, and it's been around, or if it's actually on the rise. And if it is, and then like we talked about before, whitetails rule. So if whitetails, we don't have the money coming in, you don't have the hunters, you don't have the deer to be able to hunt because of chronic wasting disease.
What does that change for everything?
What does that do to the whole game and parks, conservation system? It could be huge. It's something we don't really want to think about, but it's going to be interesting to see where we're at in 10 years. There are states putting in no baiting, and I can see that being, a big widespread thing that happens anymore. There are states, certain chronic wasting disease areas where they got special rules, no transporting, carcasses or anything like that. Who knows?
Also with cutting down the population of deer, if they feel like it's spreading and the way to stop it is to have less deer so they're not as close together, then that means more permits, which is good for a little bit, but then you have really low populations again. So then like you said, that leads back to what's it do for hunting when you're culling, in this sense, a lot of deer.
Yeah, I know there's some, I think it's Pennsylvania, maybe Missouri, they have the conservation zones, and that's where they're increasing doe harvest to reduce numbers to hopefully spread the deer out to stop the spread, and they're still researching whether that, works or not.
Is that a short-term solution to a
Yeah.
long-term problem. Like, can we do that, but if it's still going to exist, then we have to keep those numbers super low.
And then what happens, like we mentioned before, all full circle, we get low deer numbers. It's going to be harder to recruit new hunters because they're not seeing the deer when they go out. And now all of us are mad because there's the same amount of people, way less deer, way less bucks. Now everything's a big uproar. Now we want more deer, but the farmers are happy because there's less deer. But then if we get more deer, it's chronic wasting disease is spreading. So it's a whole huge deal. Like I mentioned, I think it has the most potential to completely change the whole deer hunting landscape.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's something that, sadly a lot of us, regular people, aren't going to understand the nuances of. You know what I'm saying? Even deer seasons and that kind of thing, people can kind of speak to stuff they don't know, but that's something that's, the disease itself and all of that stuff's way above so much of all of our heads that we can't even probably begin to understand what that threat is or what we can do about it.
There's biologists, doctors that that disagree on how important or unimportant chronic wasting disease is, let alone us who's just getting filtered information, and we hear this at the coffee shop and we hear this from game and parks, and who knows what is actually real and what isn't, because there's so much out there that's hard, like you mentioned, to decipher what is even accurate or true.
I think the thing about it is habitat is something we feel like we can still control. We can do, like we mentioned, stuff on our own land to help the habitat, but what can we do to prevent CWD in our property? At least at this point, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there watching and hoping and crossing your fingers that it doesn't happen, because you kind of feel it's out of control and you don't have no control over it.
That's the worst thing, is when you have no control over it. Like you said, you can do stuff on your land, make it work, all that good stuff, but you can't control. Like I said, if they make baiting rules or regulations, you can control a little bit, but at some point, it's kind of like Corona. It's just the virus is going to be there. Some aspects of it you can't control. You can only do so much, I guess. So that makes it hard too. But no doubt to me that rules, game regulations will change because of it. Like I mentioned, the baiting stuff. I can see and I think the companies that, if you look at the companies, look at it over the past 3 years, the companies that just did attractants, like Trophy Rock, they're coming out with stuff now that you just put on your plots to make them grow better, because I think even now that's pretty telling, they see the end of
what they're
pure
doing.
attractants that they feel the need to break out and branch out they feel like baiting, because of chronic wasting disease, is going to be, illegal to bait everywhere. So I can see that happening. Transportation laws, as far as, you get your deer, you can only take it in your county or something. It's going to be interesting to see where those transportation laws go. And then one that's still, I think, highly debatable is the meat. If you have a chronic wasting disease infected deer, is it safe to eat the meat? And there's different stuff out there, as far as they've said people have eat it, it's fine. And then they did one study, I think I heard, and they gave it to, I don't know if they gave it to monkeys or dogs or I don't know, something, rats maybe, I don't know. But they said that they contracted it from eating the meat. But then there was flaws with that study too, so it's going to be interesting to see too. Do people trust the biologists and the people enough, if they say it's safe to eat, that people are going to eat it?
And the thing, even with that, if I kill a buck, I don't know if it has CWD.
You're going to have some rapid
or
test.
not. Are we going to have to test our deer before we eat it? Do we trust that it's safe to eat? Because you don't know that if it has it or not once you kill it, unless you get it tested. So do we, as hunters, feel it's still a safe product? Because that's one of the big things with hunting, is you say we can go out and kill meat for our table that is healthy, but then you have the questions with this, is it healthy for us or for my family?
Yeah, so it's going to be like I wrote down too, it's going to be the most interesting one to see where it's actually at in 10 years compared to all the other ones. Big buck states, I don't know, probably stay the same. Habitat's going to decrease, but we can, do what we can. But chronic wasting disease, what is going to happen in 10 years? Think of where we've come in the last 10 years compared to where we're at now. So It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So we'll move on to hunter demographics. So what do you think, just real broad, hunter demographics is going to be, stay the same, or are we going to, I know recruitment efforts have gone, we're trying to get hunters however we can. So is it going to reach out to younger, older, different races? What is it going to stay? How's it going to go?
I feel it's shifting younger. With the influx of technology, not just in hunting, but in everything, I feel like it's trending younger. Whether it's because you want to go out and produce your own YouTube show, you want to do a podcast, you want to film it or take pictures or whatever. I think the art or the media that has been kind of introduced into the hunting that we've seen take off, I think lends itself to a younger audience.
Yeah, I think it's been around forever, but social media is getting new, younger hunters involved, and I think that's the way to get new, younger hunters
And they can
involved.
see it when maybe they're not exposed to it, if that makes sense. If you don't have a dad or a mom or an uncle or whoever that takes you out hunting, they can still see this stuff on their phone and go, hey, that's interesting, and there's enough information out there they can learn how to do it.
Yeah, there's information, and that's the other thing with social media. There's information everywhere for how to get started, where to go, where to hunt, how to do all that, and there's so many people that are like them doing it now that they can see. It's not some show on the Outdoor Channel that, one, they have to happen to stop on the Outdoor Channel on their direct TV thing anyways in the past, and then it might be some guy hunting over a giant food plot killing big deer, which is okay, but it doesn't seem attainable. Whereas now you have guys like the Hunting Public and Catman and Dan Infalt going out on public land. That's more attainable, more relatable than some of the other stuff to get the new, younger, not even younger, just new hunters in general out there. So social media is going to be huge in getting new hunters. Like you said, I think it makes them younger.
Yeah, and I think it's just exposure to it. You know, like if we grow up and our dad didn't hunt when he was little, then we're probably not going to hunt. But now you can look online and be exposed to it and think, hey, you know, I grew up in the country, that seems kind of fun. Even if no one taught you, you can see it and know that it's a thing that you can go and do.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned it earlier, but the public land promotion has been big. I think for getting new hunters, or for just getting, you know, hunters off of their small piece of private, doing more hunting. I think the promotion of public land has been big in recent years.
Yeah, and then there's positives and negatives to that, but it is, like you said, it's more attainable. Somebody looks at that and goes, I can go down the street and go to my piece of public land, and it can be a success, it can be fun, I can have a good time doing it. When before it was, oh, public land, you can't do that, that's not going to be fun, it's going to be a terrible experience, turns people away, or at least now you have some positives being thrown in there when you talk about public land.
Taking the stigma away from public land. Because before, if you read anything about public land, they were talking about how overcrowded it was and all this stuff. I haven't seen an article that's talked about overcrowded public land in the last 2 years, because that stigma that the outdoor writers had before is completely gone. I don't know if it was even probably right to start with, but it was there, but the last couple of years have taken that completely away. So, and that access to whitetails, going back to recruitment, just access in general. Public land, we know it's harder to get on private land, but that access is huge to hunter recruitment. Because I don't see a lot of, maybe they do, but I don't see it anymore, where people used to start out, you know, hunting rabbits or hunting pheasants and then kind of turkeys, and then now we're hunting whitetails. Now it's, you just start hunting whitetails when you're 12, you know. So it's, I see the access, again, going back to whitetails are king, having whitetails, people are just starting hunting whitetails. They're not doing the other stuff like they used to. So whitetails are still, you know, vitally important in getting people started in hunting. Because they're everywhere, which is great. They're highly adaptable, and it's a challenge. If you want to shoot, even shooting a doe, but shooting a buck of any size is a challenge. So they're everywhere, relatively easily accessible, and they're a challenge, and it's attainable to actually shoot a decent-sized whitetail. That's everything you want if you're a new hunter. That's everything we want in being hunters that have hunted for a while, is the opportunities there, and it's fun to hunt them. So that's really big in getting new hunters, I think.
Yeah, and I think, that just lends itself to, like you said, just getting new people out there and interested. It's a good species to start with, and I think, like you said, with the trending younger, access is key, because if you don't got no place to go, even if you want to do it, you can't.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up in general, your thoughts on not public land, but just deer hunting in general in 10 years. What's your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, for me, I said it earlier, I think that shift towards not just recognizing that we like to hunt, but that we can do something, you know, with the land that we have, and I don't want to say caring more, I guess, about creating that habitat and creating a world for the species we like to hunt. I think that's going to be the shift, or that's my guess at the shift. Caring more, watching the populations, doing what we can to help the wildlife even more than we are now.
Yeah, but I think to me it's the most interesting thing is what's the new trend going to be?
Because there'll be one.
Yeah.
Public land has been that trend
Yep.
as we've grown up.
Yep.
But there'll be something.
A new one. So what piece of technology that we don't even have our hands on yet is going to change it, or what? I don't know. Just what trend in general? Where's the hunting industry going to go? See, it's going to be interesting to watch. So, and that will wrap it up. So, end of our first show. Like we said, comment whatever you want over whatever we talked about. Make sure to leave a like if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment if you're listening to the podcast, wherever you're listening to it at. Go ahead and leave a rating, whatever you think it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. Leave it, because that really helps us, get more listeners, helps the podcast people find us. So leave a comment, leave a rating, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we also have on our regular Whitetail Instinct channel, we have all our turkey hunting, whitetail hunting, all that content, all our blog videos over there. So if you're not there, go over there, just type in Whitetail Instinct on YouTube, go and find it.
We're talking about hunting here, we're hunting on that channel.
Yep, so go find us over there. But thanks for listening, or thanks for watching.